The sun has left and forgotten me. It's dark, I cannot see.
Your stories don't define you, and how you tell them will. Hi, I'm Sarah Elkins, your host and Chief Storymaker at Elkins Consulting. If you've been listening to my show for a while, you've probably noticed a big change in the format. Summertime can be hard on podcasters. We lose a lot of our listeners this time of year, and it can be difficult to stay motivated to keep putting out quality content when we know people aren't as likely to listen. So this summer, I've been focused on brief, less than 20-minute episodes that can keep a person's attention while still offering insights and entertainment. What you've been hearing, and will continue to hear, is a brief story of a pivotal moment in my life, and then a thread pulled to generate insights about it. And I have two goals for you. One is to uncover your related stories so you can add them to your collection and practice them, have them ready when the opportunities present themselves. And the second is to demonstrate storytelling in a practical, approachable way, so you hear how I compose my words, phrases, and how I use my tone of voice to add dynamics and meaning. In today's episode, you'll hear two stories from my past, and then a recent story that demonstrates the insights from those other stories. We experience meaningful moments every day, things that shape who we are and how we behave into the future. But most of us don't think about life that way. A few years ago, during the last session in a program with an individual public speaking client, I asked what had changed for him as a result of our work together. And he answered with a story about driving his daughter to soccer practice. At the end of the story, he said, "Working with you has made me a more present father, a more present person generally." He said something about how he's paying more attention to his interactions because he realized that he's making stories every day. He recognized that some of those stories would benefit him professionally because he can share them when he's meeting people or speaking to groups. But he said that the real beneficiaries are himself and his family, knowing that these are the stories of him choosing to be more conscious and present for the people he loves. When our older son was 2 years old, and I didn't yet know I was pregnant with our second, I was following the toddler through the Atlanta airport. I was exhausted after catching our first flight out at 6 a.m., a quick layover in Salt Lake City, and now longer layover in this busy Atlanta airport before our final flight to our destination. Our older son was a wanderer. He'd wander away from me and not look back. He was endlessly curious to go check things out. I knew that, so I had picked up a little wrist tether. It was a band that I could Velcro around his wrist, and then I could hold on to a tether, attach it to my wrist, or attach it to a stroller. As tired as I was, I knew that tether would help keep him close to me. But as we wandered through the airport, I noticed more than one person do a double take at the tether and glare at me, full of judgment, seeing it as a leash. I hit my limit and turned toward one woman making an awful face at me and said, "He's 2. He's fast, and this is a busy airport. Maybe instead of judging, you'll offer to chase him around for a bit so I can rest?" She looked away quickly, furiously blushing and pretending it wasn't her that I was talking to. Fast forward just under a year later at a grocery store. I had a cart half filled with food, an infant in a car seat on the cart, and a nearly 3-year-old throwing his first ever tantrum in the cereal aisle. At first, I didn't know what to do. I almost didn't recognize my own kid. But I got myself together and I said, "I'm going to count to 3. If I get to 3, we will leave our groceries here and go straight home, and you're going to take a nap. 1, 2, 3. It was the first time he tested me like this, and I actually got to 3. I picked him up, kicking and screaming, threw him over my shoulder, grabbed the infant car seat in my other arm. and I looked over at the cashier nearby and said, "I'm so sorry. I don't know when I'll get back here, but I really have to leave right now." And she nodded and waved goodbye. But another customer who was nearby watched my toddler have his tantrum and was tisk-tisking and shaking her head and glaring at me. When I left, I could see her full of judgment, and I couldn't hold back. I turned and looked straight at her and said, "Should I tolerate the tantrum? Should I let him have what he wants and let go of the boundary I set? Should I just let him have the sugar cereal? If you think I should, will you take him when he's 15? Because that's when this will show up in way worse behavior." I saw the same response, quickly looking away, mortified, pretending like it wasn't her I had just spoken to. Those experiences shaped my parenting and my support for other parents. Up until that tantrum, our older son was such an easy kid. I remember feeling judgy toward other parents whose kids threw tantrums, wondering why they didn't just set better boundaries, wondering why they seemed to tolerate bad behavior. But after it was my kid, I woke up to the reality that every kid is different, and every parent has their own way of dealing with the behavior. And instead of judging, I offer compassion, and whenever possible, assistance. Like the time I was on stage with our band at a big outdoor community-wide event. A child got away from her mother, and a police officer brought her up to me to find her mom from the stage. I made an announcement, and her mother came running up to get her toddler. She had been in full-blown panic mode when she couldn't find her for the previous 10 minutes. The mom was distracted for just a moment with her older child when the toddler disappeared. I whispered to her as I handed her the child, "These littles are fast. It happens to almost all of us at some point," and smiled with compassionate love at that terrified mother. We're back to the present now, listeners, and to a recent experience at the Denver airport as I made my way through the line at security. I was behind a father traveling alone with his toddler. I had enjoyed watching them interact as they walked through the maze of security boundaries. When it was time to put their bag on the conveyor, the father looked away for just a moment and his toddler disappeared through security and around a big piece of equipment. The father went after him, and I turned to hear the TSA agent bellow, "Sir, get back here right now." The father tried to explain that his kid went under there, and just then, another agent who had seen what happened had jumped up, stopped the kid, and brought him back to the dad. It all happened so fast. And then I heard the whispers behind me. I turned and saw the judgy faces and said loudly with a big smile on my face, "Those littles can move so fast." When I was through security and saw the father holding that sweet boy, I could see the father's face was flushed with embarrassment and stress. I could feel it from where I stood. I walked over to him and said, "No judgment here. It only takes a moment." I totally remember that feeling, and I would have done exactly the same thing. Take a breath. He's okay. You're okay. And again, smiled with compassion. He smiled and said quietly, "Thank you," with a sigh of relief. I've heard people talk about how raising kids takes a village, but when it comes time to offer assistance and support, they quickly turn to judgment instead, shaking their heads and tisk-tisking under their breath, as if a parent doesn't see your expression or hear your judgment. And that's just not helpful. The reality is that most of us have been on the other side of the equation, accidentally cutting someone off in traffic, and then a few minutes later, honking at someone who does exactly the same thing. Or allowing our frustration to erupt in a loud voice at our kid, and years later, judging a parent for the same behavior. It was my experience as a parent that helped me see things from that perspective. But it shouldn't take being in their shoes to offer compassion and assistance. Watching the drama unfold at the airport brought it all back to me. The challenges of being a parent, especially of a toddler, and the ridiculousness of the judgment I experienced. Judged if I lost track of the toddler, and judged by having a wrist tether on him. Judged if I give in to the tantrum, and judged for walking away from the car full of groceries. It's hard enough being a parent with all the self-doubt and exhaustion. Do we really need to add a stranger's judgment to that equation? Offering compassion to that father was a full circle moment for me, a pivot point in the realization that my experiences from the past truly shaped who I am today. Listeners, now it's your turn. Did a memory come back to you when you heard my stories in the episode? Did you see yourself in one or more of the characters? And did that generate an insight or discomfort? Remember, discomfort can be a powerful tool for healthy self-reflection. Is there something you'll intentionally be more aware of after listening? Something you'll try to do differently when faced with an opportunity for compassion and support instead of judgment? As always, thanks for listening to Your Stories Don't Define You, How You Tell Them Will. If you're curious to learn about working with me, please visit my website, elkinsconsulting.com, and schedule time to chat. Sign up for periodic updates about my work, and connect with me on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook to see and hear more content about StrengthsFinder, storytelling, and public speaking.
You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile.